In a small town like this, life usually moves slowly. The mornings begin with the sound of roosters, the buzz of small motorcycles rolling down narrow streets, and neighbors greeting each other with warm smiles. In places like this, people grow up knowing everyone, knowing every corner and knowing the stories behind each home and shop. But sometimes hidden in a town like this, far from the bright lights of big cities and entertainment stages, a talent is quietly waiting to be discovered. And this is where the story begins, with a young Filipino boy named Elias, a kid who grew up without much but carried a voice, powerful enough to echo far beyond the boundaries of his simple world. Elias lived in a tiny wooden house, patched together through the years with whatever materials his mother could find. His father had left when he was still a baby, so it had always been just him and his mother, Maria, a hard-working woman who took whatever jobs she could, doing laundry, cleaning houses, helping cook for small eateries, anything that brought home enough money to keep them going. Life wasn't easy, but Elias never complained. He was young, but he understood their struggles more than most kids his age. He knew their meals depended on how much money his mother made that day, and he knew that the shoes he wore were already 2 years old. Still, Elias was the kind of boy who found joy in the smallest things. And the biggest joy of all was music. Their neighborhood was full of sound. Children shouting as they played games, neighbors singing karaoke during weekend nights, tricycles passing by with loud engines. But there was something different when Elias sang. His voice didn't sound like a child's. It carried warmth, depth, and emotion far beyond his years. The people who heard him sing for the first time always reacted the same way. They would stop, turn, and stare, wondering how a boy who looked so quiet could possess a voice so rich, so soulful, and so full of the kind of longing that touched the heart. Elias discovered his love for music through an old, slightly broken radio his mother kept in their home. It only caught a few stations, mostly playing old classics and ballads. But every time the familiar guitar intro of Hotel California played, Elias would freeze, listening as if every note spoke directly to his soul. He didn't understand the lyrics at first, but he understood the feeling. That timeless melody became his escape. It became the sound that followed him through long days, and quiet nights comforting him when life felt heavy. He practiced every day, sometimes late at night when the world was quiet. But Elias had to keep his voice soft so the neighbors wouldn't hear, because he didn't like drawing attention to himself. When he felt shy, he would sing into his pillow, letting it absorb the sound. But even then, his tone carried emotion that couldn't be hidden. His mother would listen quietly from the other room, tears sometimes forming in her eyes, because she knew there was something extraordinary inside her son. She didn't know how to help him reach the world, but she prayed that someday, somehow someone would hear him. That day came sooner than expected. One afternoon, while Elias was helping his mother carry laundry to a nearby house, he walked past a small roadside store, where a group of local boys were hanging out. One of them had a guitar strumming tunes casually. Elias paused listening, and the boy with the guitar noticed. "Hey, Elias, he said you like Hotel California, right?" "Sing it." Elias froze. He wasn't used to singing in front of people, especially boys who liked to tease him. But something inside him pushed him to say yes. Maybe it was the guitar. Maybe it was the melody he loved so much. Or maybe it was because he wanted to show his mother that he wasn't afraid to share his gift. He stepped forward, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first line alone stunned the entire group. Their laughter faded, replaced by silence. Their eyes widened. Even adults walking by slowed down, drawn to the sound coming from this small, skinny kid with big eyes and worn-out flip-flops. His voice didn't quiver, didn't break. It soared smoothly, confidently, carrying the emotion of someone who had lived through much more than his age could explain. By the time he reached the chorus, one of the boys had already taken out his phone and started recording. That video changed everything. Within hours, the clip started spreading around the town. By the next morning, it had reached neighboring communities. By the end of the week, it had reached the entire Philippines. People shared it with captions like, "Listen to this boy, future star. This kid needs to be on a big stage." And pure talent from the heart of the Philippines. The video eventually reached a talent scout who worked with America's Got Talent. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. After double-checking the video and making sure it wasn't edited or altered, he decided to reach out Elias, and his mother couldn't believe it. When they received a message inviting him to audition for AGT, At first, Maria hesitated. Flying to America was expensive, far beyond anything they could afford. But that's when the community stepped in. People from the town shop owners, teachers, neighbors, tricycle drivers, students. Everyone contributed what they could. Some gave coins, some gave bills. Some donated food for their trip. It was the first time Elias truly understood how much the people around him believed in him. They weren't just supporting him financially, they were supporting his dream. And so for the first time in his life, Elias boarded a plane. His mother held his hand tightly as the plane rose into the clouds. He stared out the window, wondering how a boy like him, from a place so small, was now headed to one of the world's biggest stages. When they arrived in Los Angeles, everything felt overwhelming. The tall buildings, the pace of the city, the unfamiliar faces, but AGT was something else entirely. The massive stage, lights, the cameras, the hundreds of people in the audience. The judges' table. It was intimidating for anyone, let alone a boy, whose biggest audience before this had been a few neighbors outside a sorry store. Backstage, Elias was quiet. He clutched his small backpack, where he kept the drawing his mother made for him when he was younger, a sketch of him holding a microphone and smiling. His mother placed her hands on his shoulders and whispered, "Anik, just sing like you always do. Sing with your heart." When his name was called, Elias took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. Simon Cowell looked up, eyebrows raised, noticing how nervous and small the boy seemed. "What's your name?" he asked Elias. He answered softly. "And how old are you?" Simon continued. 12, Elias replied. Simon leaned forward. "And what will you be singing for us today?" Elias swallowed, feeling his heart pound in his chest. "Hotel California," he said. A murmur passed through the audience. It was a big song, too big for most adult singers. But Elias stood still, gripping the microphone, waiting. Then the music began with the very first note. Simon's expression changed instantly. The audience leaned forward. Some judges exchanged glances. Elias's voice was calm, rich, and controlled. It carried emotion that made even the farthest seats fall silent. His singing wasn't just good. It was pure, heartfelt, and soulful in a way that felt almost unreal. He didn't try to imitate anyone. He didn't force the notes. He sang from deep inside, from the place where all his loneliness, struggles, and dreams lived. It was as if the entire story of his life was woven into every syllable. Halfway through the song, the camera cut to Simon, jaw slightly open, eyes fixed on the stage. This wasn't a normal reaction. This was the reaction reserved for moments that were rare, unexpected, and unforgettable. By the time Elias reached the final chorus, the room was so silent you could hear breath being held. And when he sang the last line, his voice floating softly through the arena, the audience erupted into applause. People jumped to their feet, some wiped tears, judges stood up, giving him a standing ovation. Simon Cowell leaned into his microphone. His voice warm. "Elias," he said, "I don't know who you are. I don't know where you came from, but that was unbelievable." The crowd roared then without waiting another second. Simon reached out and slammed the golden buzzer. The confetti burst through the air. Elias froze, eyes wide. Completely overwhelmed, his mother backstage fell to her knees, crying, her hands covering her mouth. Elias had dreamed of singing, but he never imagined this moment, never imagined that the world would celebrate him this way. As the confetti fell, Simon walked toward the stage to speak to him directly. "You have something very special," he said softly, "and I want the world to hear it." That moment became one of the most emotional, golden buzzer clips of the season. People all over the world cried watching it. Millions viewed the audition within the first 24 hours. Elias became a symbol of hope, proof that even a poor kid from a forgotten corner of the world could shine brighter than anyone expected. After the episode aired, messages poured in from everywhere. Singers, musicians, fans, and even people who had given up on their dreams began writing to him, saying his story reminded them that greatness can come from anywhere. He received gifts, letters, offers for mentorship, and invitations to perform. Companies reached out to sponsor his journey, making sure he and his mother were supported. But through it all, Elias stayed humble. He didn't forget where he came from. Every interview he gave, he always mentioned his mother, his town, and the people who helped him get to America. He said his dream wasn't just to sing, but to give back, to help other kids who were like him, talented but unseen. As AGT moved forward, Elias continued to perform. With the same heart and soul that captured the world's attention, each stage, each performance, each reaction from the judges reminded him how far he had come. And every night before he slept, he whispered a quiet prayer of thanks and promised himself that no matter how famous he became, he would never let the world change who he was, because he knew the truth. The boy standing on that huge AGT stage was still the same kid from that small town, the same boy who sang into an old pillow so he wouldn't wake the neighbors, the same boy who grew up with little but dreamed big, and the same boy whose greatest gift wasn't just his voice, but his heart.